setting goals, not just goals that you kind of want to accomplish, but more meaningful goals, ones that you really kind of feel deep in your heart. And I know for me, so when I first started, I had no idea where I even wanted to do, what goals I even wanted to look at. There are different charts, or maybe like the wheel of life, or categories, anywhere from 4 to I'd say probably 12 categories of where you can start to list out your goals. And for the main ones, I would do, mind, body, soul, and spirit. So mind is, what kind of like intellectual things do you want to learn or do to kind of stimulate your mind. The second one is your body. What do you want to do to become healthier? Whether that is internal, external, maybe exercise, stretching. The next one is your soul. What makes you feel alive? Things that are going to really drive you and kind of like your passion behind things. And then the next is spirit, to a higher purpose, whether it's God or universe or Jesus, whatever it is that kind of connects you to something bigger than yourself. Those are the main 4 that I would start with. Then you can also break these down. You can go into, financial, relationships, health, wellness. Even you can go a little bit further. So take relationships, for example, and you can break it down into your significant other, your friendships, what kind of groups that you want to get into. So it kind of depends on where you want to go. But I would definitely start out a little bit more broad at first so that you can not really have to categorize it and put things into categories so small that you didn't even know that you could get there. But that will come over time. And so once you have these kind of categories, just taking maybe the main 4, and you sit down and you allow yourself some time, grab a piece of paper, something to write with, and just kind of see where it is that you want to go towards, what it is that you want it to look at. And so for me, I couldn't even do this. And I actually had to set aside time beyond this of just starting to go back to daydreaming. I remember when I was a kid and you would just lay there in the ground staring up at the clouds, making up imaginary, things that you saw in the clouds. So I actually went back to that and kind of tried to go back to earlier childhood of just imagining things or letting my mind go and be open to things that could possibly come in. Another good way is to meditate a little bit before this to kind of settle your mind, because my mind, it overthinks all the time. And sometimes it never shuts off. So even just taking a couple of minutes to take a couple deep breaths, I ask for guidance to just allow my mind to be open to possibilities. And so for me, I start with possibly a question of, what do I want my relationships to look like? And I kind of just sit there and pause and just see what comes to me. I don't try to structure it. I don't try to force it. And sometimes for me, my mind will go, all sorts of different ways, totally off topic. And then I just bring it back and I ask the same question that I, am trying to find my answer to. The thing is, when those thoughts come to you, don't worry about how it's going to happen. Because I can tell from experience that I get hung up on the how. My sister gets hung up on the how. And it's funny because she gets hung up on the how of everybody else, but when it comes to her ideas, she doesn't want everybody to get down on her hows. And I get it. Because you have like this brilliant idea that you want to do. Say you want to, build a business and you want to start selling something. And you're so excited. And then all of these people, and then you tell people, and then these people are like, well, how are you going to do this? How are you going to do this? And how are you going to do this? And it just kind of squashes you. And I'm like, well, what's the point? Because that's so frustrating, because I don't want to know the how right now. So a couple of things with that is, once you come up with something, make sure that when you're talking to people and you want to try to share these thoughts, and I would think twice about that at first, because people like to try to help you and they want to make sure that you're not going to get hurt. And in reality, it might just be their fears coming out, their beliefs of something that may or may not happen. So be careful on who you want to share those goals with. And second is just take time. Just keep seeing that end goal. I had just heard a story where he was like, I want to make $60,000 by the end of the year. And he didn't know how to do it. But if somebody was to come up and be like, you're never going to do that, there's no way possible, you've got all of these, negative things going on. And he stuck to it. He just knew that somehow he was going to be able to make it. And so he ended up investing probably about $25,000 with some people that he had known. And he said that it was kind of a stretch, but he was working with them. And don't get me wrong, he said that there was, some conflict, and the people that he had partnered with had called him in and was like, you know what, this really isn't working, and that our relationship is kind of like sandpaper, so it's a little bit rough, and they all knew that, and they said, we want to buy you out. And what they did was he ended up getting his investment back plus the $60,000 to buy him out of the business that he had gone into with them. So don't worry about the why. But the tip that I want to share that has really gotten me through is because I like to see the steps. And I'm not saying to have steps laid out, because maybe you can get 3 or 4 steps of where you might start to go. But really all that you really need to do is focus on the next step. The next step. And it might not be the right step, but it is a step in the direction. And you'll learn maybe that step didn't work, or maybe that there was a better step to it. And so what he said was, it's like going through fog. He's like, you can't see what's in front of you, but if you move that next 10 feet, you can see a little bit further. And so all you have to do is just keep going through this fog. And the next step is just gonna, it will eventually reveal itself to you. So circling back to, having those grand visions of what you truly want to do, or even goals that you want to do, is don't get caught up in the how, because some way, somehow, things are going to be presented to you, whether it is to try to keep you on that course or to keep you off of that course. And I say off of that course, and it's because maybe that isn't the right path for you. But starting down that path is where you need to go in order to, veer off to the left or to the right. But if you wouldn't have even started to begin with, you would have never gotten to the path that you needed to be on. Because I feel that everything that is happening to you is for your benefit. The universe or God or whatever is higher than you that you believe in is truly with you. And even if you don't believe in something bigger than you want your life to try to be the best that it is. And things are going to come in, and they're just things. They might not be bad, they might not be good, but it's also the perspective that you put onto it. How you view things, how you look at those things, is going to change. And if you get caught into maybe that type of thinking, just be aware of it. I mean, take a look at like how you're thinking, and then you can be like, well, what if this doesn't turn out the same as it has before? Just because you've had somebody cheat on you doesn't mean that all the rest of the billions of people out there are going to cheat on you. So for one of mine, it has been a pattern for the people that I have seen, is that cops will cheat on you, because I have seen a pattern in my life, whether it is through my life or people close to me or friends that I've had. And I have to remind myself that that handful of cops that have cheated is not all of the cops that are out there. And I've had to actually try to find cops that I have known that have not cheated, that have, that relationship with their wife. Just because there's been 3 or 4 or 5 people that I've seen who have done it doesn't mean that the rest of the thousands of cops that are out there are going to do that. And so what I'm saying is, if you get stuck into this isn't going to be, or this is the way that it's always going to be, try to change that. Try to start looking in a different direction for examples that almost negate that, to bring more of a positive thing into your life. So there's this story of a farmer and his horse and his son. And the horse ran away one day. And the neighbors came up to the farmer and they were like, "Oh, that's such a bummer that your horse ran away." And we're kind of showing sympathy to him like it was a bad thing. And all the farmer could say was, "Maybe." And then a couple of days later, the horse came back with wild horses. And the neighbors came up to the farmer and they were like, "Wow, that's amazing. You have just now gotten, more horses to be able to farm your land. That is wonderful news." And the farmer said, "Maybe." And then the son decided that he was going to go and ride one of these horses and broke his leg. And the neighbors came up to the farmer and they were like, "Wow, I can't believe that your son broke his leg on one of the horses. That's such awful news." And the farmer replied, "Maybe." And then the army came through to draft people into the war. And because the son's leg was broken, he didn't get drafted. And the neighbors came up and, "Wow, that turned out to be such an amazing thing that, because your son's leg was broken, that he didn't get drafted for the war." And the farmer replied, "Maybe." And so the story is that things are going to happen in your life, whether they're good or bad. That is a perspective that we put onto it. Because in if you take that step back, it is just events happening. They are just things happening. And I had this one manager who, she would just always say, "It is what it is." And, being back in, 20 years ago, I never understood that. And so now what I think she meant was, things are just what it is. And the feeling or the attachment that we put onto it comes from our past, comes from our beliefs. Because I will give the example of, snakes. There are some people who are terrified of snakes because they have had something bad happen to them in the past. They've had some event happen to them that has put a perspective and a belief into their mind, where the other person has never had anything like that happen. So they just think of snakes like snakes. They're just animals. The same goes for roller coasters. There are people who are terrified of roller coasters, and then there are ones who are thrilled to go onto the ride. So you get the two ends of that spectrum. And so circling back into how you are going to get to your destination, to your goal, you don't have to worry about it. Take the one step. If stuff happens, you're just going to deal with it. It doesn't mean that it's good or bad. It's just something that you have to go through and you have to learn. Because if you keep going through that fog, you will get to your destination. And sometimes it might be a little bit faster if it starts to, get too crowded or too thick, and you can't see it, and you have to take some time. And there have been times where you just have to stop and you have to let things settle. And then there are times where it's perfectly clear and you are like, "Oh my gosh, I am getting there so much faster." All you have to do is just keep moving forward. Just take that next step. And they don't have to be huge leaps and bounds. If you're trying to, lose some weight, one of those steps is, taking it down into like, "Oh, I'm going to exercise 5 times." And then you can go a little bit further and being like, "This is my plan when I get into the gym." And sometimes you have to take it down even further, is, "I'm just going to get dressed for the day to go to the gym." And sometimes it might even need to go further, is, "I'm just going to put on my sneakers for that day." All you have to do is take a step in the direction of where you want to be. And if you continue to do those things, if you continue to just show up to the gym every day, eventually you're going to lose that weight and you'll get to your goal. But it does start sometimes with those small things. And doing the simplest things on a continuous basis will get you there.